Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Pieces of Impact podcast. My name is Steve Seger. I'm your host here, and I got an awesome guest today, and Bret Halsey joining us. Bret, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Steve. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and Bret's got a really neat background. To the listener out there, he played professional soccer and is now a full-time real estate investor. So we're going to have a real fun time unpacking his background. Bret, I want to give you an opportunity here to just walk us through your story from, I guess, the beginning, wherever that is for you to start, and then walk us up to today. It'll allow our viewer here to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess for me, it started with soccer. I feel like I've always been a competitive, child guy, whatever. So I was playing sports when I was younger, basketball, soccer, and I just remember being, when I was in sixth grade, I guess I think that was around the time I realized that I wasn't big enough to, make it in basketball. So I made the switch over to soccer, and at the time, I was one of the I wouldn't say I was, one of the better players for my age group, but, I just remember always, trying to get to that spot where I could say I was around, the best of the best. And so just kind of slowly did that over time, made it to my high school team, was very grateful to be a part of a really good club team that went to the national championship and won. We were 16. So was able to get scouted for UVA. And that was a great school. Was there for about 2.5 years. You know, and at the time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do after soccer. All I knew is that I wanted to be a pro soccer player. And it was funny, my major at UVA, you didn't have to choose it until after your second year, which is something
Hmm.
unique that they do there. But I think my major, right before I left, um, was like American studies, some random, major that I had no interest in, but just something that I picked. Um, and so it wasn't really until I left school and started playing professional soccer that I started looking into real estate. But I remember when I moved out to Utah after I got drafted, I bought a house out there just based off of the premise that I could live in one room, rent out the others, and cover my mortgage. And
House
I was
hack.
a house hack, baby, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that. And I don't know. I also did study stats in college a little bit too. I've always been a numbers guy, and the numbers just made sense at the time. I was able to buy with the super low interest rate. This was in 2021, and effectively paid for my entire mortgage up to maybe some utility costs. But I thought it was just the most genius thing in the world. I thought I discovered fire, and so that was kind of like the starting point of my real estate journey. From there, just want to learn as much as I could about it and different strategies, and ended up meeting tons of people like Jared and some other guys here in Cincinnati who introduced me to some other topics. It's been a journey. I mean, all across the entire process, soccer, real estate. I feel like the fundamentals of being successful are, for the most part, pretty similar.
Hmm. Now, backtracking a little bit, I want to learn about UVA and kind of the recruiting process there. Was that I mean, how did the recruiting process go for soccer? I'm not sure how that typically looks. Was it pretty in depth or a lot of
Yeah, I
visits?
mean, I think for us, I was pretty lucky to be on a great club soccer team. So we had a lot of exposure. When we were 16, um, like junior year of high school for most of us, we had won the national championship, and we had tons of eyes on us. That whole tournament. So pretty much, I want to say 75% of the guys on my team went D1. Everyone except for one guy played in college, but we had tons of eyes on us. I had a few schools that I was looking at. UVA was always a dream school since they won the national championship. I think it was 2014 was the most recent one. But ever since then, that was always my dream school. Being from Virginia, that was an easy, dream school for me. And so, was looking at a few different schools. And when they offered it to me, just it was pretty much, I didn't know it at the time. I mean, I had a spot on the team, but it was almost akin to like a walk on spot. Not necessarily, but when I got there, I didn't realize the amount of the odds that were kind of stacked against me. I was probably, I don't know, 7'5'8" at the time, like 100 and like 35 pounds when I was in college, like freshman year, maybe even a little bit less.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize it, but just the way that they do recruiting at schools like that for soccer in terms of like trying to build a successful team, they bring in, I don't know, we might have had 35 guys on the team at the time, and you only have 11 players on the field at any one time. So I didn't realize at the time, but the odds were very much, stacked against me. But nonetheless, yeah, that process was fun, the recruiting process, and was really grateful to go to such a great school.
Mhm. I've driven through that campus once, and it's beautiful. Um, you okay, so 30 guys on the team, 11 get through. Do they do cuts? I mean, like, do they narrow it down, or is it everyone's on the roster, but only 11 guys actually play? I'm not
Yeah, I
like a
mean,
hu okay,
they'll have the rosters, 30, 35 guys, and you'll have 11 guys at the field at one time. And our
okay.
team, the UVA, we didn't do, too many subs. There was a couple teams that would sort of do plenty of subs during a game, maybe get, 19 or 20 guys into the game, but we were not like that. We might have put 13 to 14 guys in, so, a couple subs over the course of the games. It really was an uphill battle, and that was something I never even considered when, choosing that school. I mean, it's just like
Mhm,
anything else. Like when I was, getting started in soccer, I was on our B team and, just always trying to get around. I feel like, something that a lot of people talk about is, surrounding yourself with the people you want to be like. And I honestly definitely feel like that's been the case for myself. It's always, you kind of rise to the level of the group. That's why you want to, it's very important to be, around people that are kind of bringing you up. Otherwise, definitely be brought down. So that's kind of what it was for me. It was just being around people that were a lot older, a lot better, stronger, whatever it was. And, every day just kind of trying to get inch a little bit closer to them.
mhm. Yeah, I like the saying, like, you're the average of your 5 closest friends. So that worked for you at UVA. Obviously, you went on to play professional soccer. Talk to me about you're probably a senior at UVA. How does that look? Are you I mean, do pro teams like is there a draft for soccer? I'm
Mhm.
ignorant to it, sorry.
Yeah, no, it was, well, it was funny because, like, so my first year, when I was, going through all this and figuring it out, I, ended up playing I ended up starting one game. It was our 3rd game of the season, and I thought I was, the hot shot at the time. I got it for 15 minutes and then got pulled out, and that was the last I ever played. So my first year, I only played 15 minutes the entire year. In
Yeah,
2nd year,
humble, yeah.
yeah, that definitely did. I mean, it gave me a lot of opportunity to kind of reflect and, put in extra work and just try to figure out, how can I get to that point. But 2nd year is when I sort of got a new position on the field, stepped into more of like a right back position as opposed to like a midfielder position. So kind of moving back on the field to get on the field, but I ended up
Mhm,
doing really well in that position. And then the next year was a COVID year. So I was a junior that year. The prior year when I was, sophomore, 2nd year, when I was playing right back, we went all the way to the national championship. We lost in the final, but that entire team, that was a professional team. Like every one of those guys went pro. And so we lost half that team. So my junior year, I was coming back as essentially, our number one guy, I wasn't the captain, but that sort of, player that had been there, the last 2 years and was, kind of, organizing things on the field and you know, all of that stuff. And so it wasn't until I left my junior year, so I didn't even make it to
I didn't
uh
know that, okay, yeah.
yeah, I ended up
I didn't know
leaving
you guys went to the Natty too, that's
2019.
crazy.
Yes, sir.
2019. My
19.
god. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that
who'd you
was fun.
play? Not to bring
Played
up
against
bad
Georgetown, which was another
Georgetown.
team that I looked at, and that was an insane game. I mean, we gave up just for some context, there's like 23, 24 games in a season. We gave up 2 goals, 2 or 3 goals the entire season, and then that one game against Georgetown, it was like everything it was just I mean, it was just, balls to the wall. I mean, it's national final, you know? So, the final score was 3-3, and we lost in penalties, which
Oh
was
my
just
god.
it was I mean, I look back at the highlights sometimes, I'm just like, "Man, this was" like, I'll still get, I'll still sweat in my hands, like, watching it because it was just so that was the biggest game in my entire life up until that point. But, I mean, although we lost, I knew, that stage was big enough that that wasn't gonna be, like, the biggest stage I played on, just because I knew how many people were watching. I knew I did well enough for myself. And so after that tournament, when I was a sophomore, this is the first time I was approached by an agent. I didn't end up making him my agent, but that was the first time I kind of got a taste of like, okay, there's someone out there that can kind of bridge that gap for me to become a professional. That's usually how it works in soccer, I'd say. You get approached by someone who has connections with teams or whatever it is. I'm not sure exactly how it is with other sports, but it's very popular across the world. There's not really a draft. I mean, there is a draft here in the U.S., but that's not necessarily the case for like England, South
Right.
America, any of these other places. It's agents going out there finding
Yeah.
players, putting them in front of teams.
How'd
Um,
you evaluate picking that agent?
I mean, I thought that honestly, I had no way to evaluate him because I had no basis. I didn't know, the different sort of agencies or like what this guy's standing was. He sort of, got me an opportunity to play with the team overseas for a little bit, which I decided not to do. I could have done it for a few weeks before going back to UVA in the spring. This was like right following the national championship. I decided not to do that. Um, but yeah, so I went back to UVA for my third year, and that was the COVID year, so that was interesting. I mean, we only played, man, probably 12 games, I wanna say, that season, so, half of what we normally would, but it was after that season that I was approached by another agent that I knew was very prominent and, kinda got select so basically the way the draft works for soccer is you have to be a senior to get drafted. You
Hmm.
can't be an undergraduate, or they only offer like 5 to 7 contracts to undergraduate, players every year, um,
Per team or just per like the
total
league?
total in the entire league. So you have to be in order to get drafted in soccer, you have to be you have to be a senior, not necessarily graduated, but you have to be a senior. But for the top, 5 to 7 undergraduates, they'll give you an
Yeah.
opportunity. They'll give you a guaranteed contract. And so
This is for the MLS, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Got it.
I was approached by an agent, um, 2 or 3 months before the draft. So this was like October of 2020. The draft is in January every year. Um, Although I want to say this year was December for some reason, but my year was in January. So I was approached a few months before the draft, and I was told that it was a potential that I would be offered this as an undergraduate. I hadn't even been planning it because, like, in my mind, I knew guys that had been, had this opportunity, and they were like, in my mind, they're like all the way up here. They're like the best undergraduates, in the
Yeah.
whole country. Some of the best players that I've seen play college soccer. Um, but I remember being, told that I could have that opportunity, and then got in touch with that agent. And I basically told him, I was like, I don't necessarily feel like I need this. Like, I can finish my degree in a year, be a senior, graduate in December, and get drafted the next year. And so I told him not necessarily to push it. I didn't need him to go out and say, hey, shop me around essentially. But ended up getting offered the opportunity nonetheless. I got offered it a week before the draft. So I was told by January 1st of 2021, I would know if or if not I would be offered, the spot. And so January 1st came and went. I wasn't offered it, but that was fine by me. And in fact, I almost preferred to stay, graduate, and then go the next year. And the draft was on the 19th. I was approached on, I can't remember exactly what day. It might have been on the 21st of January. I was approached on the 13th of January, and I was doing this like I just switched my major from American Studies to statistics, and I had to do like 9 stat classes in like 1 year. And so I was doing
Yeah.
this like really intense, like 3-week long, like 10 hours a day class. It was like 7 p.m. at night, and I get a call from the coach at UVA, and he was like, "You're about to get a call from someone at the league. They're going to offer you the contract." And I was like, "Oh, this is happening."
Way
And so that
better
was a
than
week.
stats.
But honestly, it took me so they call this was a week before the draft. This is the 13th. I was told that 2 weeks before that I would know. And so I didn't hear anything, and I was like, "That's fine. I'll just do all my, stat classes. I'll get all that sorted away." And 2 weeks later, a week before the draft, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna offer this to you." And so I didn't, at the time, obviously it was really cool to see that like in writing, in offer, I suppose, to play professional soccer, which was always a goal. But, in my mind, I'm thinking, I didn't know if I really wanted to go now or later. And it was actually my mom that convinced me to drop out and go pursue this, which is kind of funny because she always said that she wanted me to finish, classes before ever doing pro soccer.
Yeah. I mean, was there a reason she was wanting you to go? I'm curious, like, what the argument was.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because, I was always the one that would say, "Hey, like, if I get this opportunity, I'm out of there," And it finally came, I was like, "You know what? Maybe I should just finish my degree, go to this." And she was one that was like, "No, go do it." I mean, realistically, worst case scenario, let's say it doesn't work out, right? 2 years down the line, can always come back, finish, right? But think about, a year from now, you could get injured. anything could happen really. So that made a lot of sense to me. It was
Yeah.
really the logical, way to look at it.
Yeah. And then FC Cincinnati drafted you, or did you start somewhere else?
I started in Utah at Real Salt Lake, so I got drafted out to Utah, and that was a completely different environment. That was tough. So when I got there, it was still during COVID. We had like a week, away from everybody, and then we had physicals a week after I, landed there, and they found this like heart condition that I had that I had no idea about, and so I had to have heart surgery before I ever um, touched a ball professionally, played, practiced, whatever. I literally couldn't do anything for like 2 months until the surgery, and in the surgery, they didn't even know if it was going to be if I was going to end up, having the issue solved or not. So I went under not knowing if I was ever going to be able to play again. That was like the most stressful time I've ever been through. It was
Right,
crazy.
right
Complete.
after you made this decision to
Yes.
drop out and go.
Yes.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. I mean, I seriously it was like, man, I just left everything. I'm in a whole new area. I don't know anybody, all the guys on the team, they're older, they have families, whatever. It's hard to sort of assimilate yourself when you're the new draft pick and all they see is some guy in sweats showing up, not allowed to do anything. I just felt completely helpless. And so that was a really, tough time. I almost didn't even want to tell my family at all because I didn't want to tell them, that one, I had to have surgery, and two, like the surgery didn't go good. I didn't want to give them, bad news twice. Eventually I did tell them, and thankfully it went well. But that was probably the most difficult, like mental period. Obviously, physically, I'm not doing anything, but mentally, it's hard to stop that thought of like just assuming that the worst is going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's scary. Was it, did you tell them like after surgery was done and everything? Like you
Mhm.
come up? Wow. Were they like
Yeah.
a little mad at you?
Well, I did end up telling them right before, and so my mom would come out for the surgery.
Okay. Yeah.
It was nice to have someone there, just as support. But I did very much consider not doing it because I was like, yeah, I mean, I didn't even want to face it myself personally and be like, hey, this is like a real thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So that was tough. And then, so I really didn't get going with the team there until like 6 months after I got there. And at that point, I was playing with our second team, which is, kind of like the AAA version of the team. It's a younger team, it's still professional, but it's mainly guys trying to break into the, what they call the first team, which is just like, again, they call it the senior team. It's just like the number one team there that plays in MLS. So that year was pretty much trying to get back on my feet. And the next year after that, I was imagining going in the preseason and just hitting the ground running and end up having to have another surgery on my ankle. And so I was out again 6 more months. And at that point, like my contract was a 2-year contract. And so I knew I'd missed a year and a half, pretty much, a year of the year and a half that I'd been there. So I kind of knew that my time was up there, around that. This was, I don't know, July of 2022 at this point. And so that's when I started looking for not necessarily other opportunities, but, consulting with my agent, the same guy that helped me initially. And then that's kind of when they, came up with the opportunity to come to Cincinnati.
Hmm. When you are brought into a new team like that, is there, I mean, do the guys in the locker room, I'm just kind of curious about the dynamic. Do you get like hazed or anything? Like, were they fun with you when you were starting out as like the draft pick, or is that not really a thing?
I mean, I feel like there's always some kind of, it's not necessarily like an initiation per se where they have you do, certain things. But I'd say there always is definitely a sort of, I don't know, not necessarily closeness, I'd say, but especially professionally, if you think about it, the world is just so transient of, the world of like professional sports is so transient. You got guys moving in and out. And so when you have like a core group of guys, a lot of times, I mean, I'm sort of guilty of this too. Like, when I was, with FC and we bring in someone new, I mean, unless it was someone that was, you knew was going to make an impact, you're always kind of doubting almost a little bit just because, you know what you had to get through, the struggles that you had to get through to get to that point. And it's always like, honestly, a lot of times those younger guys, they kind of just, stay on the edges or just kind of bounce off. And that's just the unfortunate reality of it. I mean, the average time in the league across professional sports, I want to say is like 3 years. And that's just all sports here in North America, I want to say, and I mean that's a pretty short amount of time, you know. So I wouldn't say necessarily it's hazing, but it is sort of a just testing to see, hey, can this person, are they really here for the next, year, 2 years, 3 years plus, or are they just kind of gonna, fluctuate in and out? Is this really someone that's gonna be here for the long haul?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, you get settled in and then bounce over to FC Cincinnati. What was that move like? I mean, how did the conversation between your agent and FC come up? And just walk me through that experience too.
Yeah, so I mean, soccer is very much like business where just networking and who you know and where you're from is important. So I went to the same school as my agent as well as the GM at FC Cincinnati. And I want to say there's one other person that was here at FC for the second team that also went to UVA. So that connection was very strong, and so it was between Cincinnati and New England, and New England also had a someone over there that was had connections to UVA. So that's sort of how it came about, which is kind of I feel like just networking is so key. Just every aspect of every sort of circle, if it's business, social, whatever it is, networking is huge.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's fun too. Getting to know new
Yeah.
people. Um, so your UVA network helped you a lot. You get signed by FC Cincinnati. What was the first few months like in Cincinnati? I mean, you go from Virginia to Utah, and then Cincinnati's probably a lot different, I would assume.
Yeah, well, Cincinnati's more like Virginia than Utah is. Utah is very desert-like, even just like topography, geography. So I felt immediately more at home. But I signed initially with our second team a year-long contract with an option to get moved up to the first team. So
Hmm.
essentially, there's no guarantees. I mean, I had my pay cut in half. I was now, officially not an MLS player. I was now the league below, and it was a complete, just starting over. Right before I came out to Cincinnati, I had an injury. I got hit in my face in August of 2022, like my last few months of being out in Utah. I broke all the bones on this side of my face, and I didn't play for 6 months. So really, when I got to Cincinnati in that January, I had to remember how to I had to relearn how to kick a ball. I'd been out for so long, had like 3 or 4 surgeries since turning pro. It was a nightmare, dude. The first 2 years of playing pro was a nightmare.
Yeah,
It
you
was
couldn't
just
catch a break.
could not catch a break, and I remember my agent at one point was like, "Dude, you're just the most unlucky, person I think I've ever seen, coming out of, getting drafted." And I was like, "That's great to hear, thanks for
Yeah, thanks.
thanks for reaffirming that for me." But, yeah, when I came here, I really didn't know what to expect. All I knew was just, keep the head down and just one day at a time, and so thankfully, I was able to stay healthy that preseason, and so a lot of times what they do is they, will combine the second and the first team in preseason, and so, I wasn't with the first team, I was signed on the second team, but we all went down to our preseason, which is in Florida, and, that's sort of an opportunity to play with the first team, see if there might be an opportunity, and I ended up doing really, really well, playing with them in some games, staying down there with them the whole time, and, yeah, that kinda set the basis for the rest of that year, at least, getting opportunities with them, so, kinda just did that for the next, 3 months and ended up getting, rostered with them once in April, I think I wanna say, and then I wasn't rostered again until June of that year, but in that game I played, and then the next game I was rostered as well, and then I got signed. I just remember those 3 months, June through, like, August of 2023 were, like, my that was, like, peak life, dude. Because I was on the second team, but I got brought up to the first team. I made my debut with the first team, which was, like, 2.5 years in the making, by the way, because I got drafted 2.5 years prior, had all those injuries, never rostered, never played for the first team until that moment, and, over the next 2 months, I mean, I, had my debut for the first team. I got signed to the first team July 1st of that year. We played against Messi in August of that year. It was just insane. It was like each month, it was almost like each day and each week was just like a new high. It was crazy.
Hmm. I've seen that picture of you and him on the field together. What was that
Bro,
like? Me playing.
it
Oh,
was
there it is. That's awesome. That's so cool. What was it like playing against him? Just being on the field with him.
It is. I just remember the warm ups, before that game. I'm just, we're supposed to be doing our things, and I'm just like, just in awe, just looking across the field and just knowing, like, in my opinion, that's the best player of all time, my favorite player of all time, and like, we're on the same field, like, we're literally about to compete against each other. It's just otherworldly. Like, there's no feeling like it. And I didn't play in that game until the last 15 minutes. So like, we played the whole game, 90 minutes. I didn't play at all. We went to extra time. First 15 minutes, I didn't play. One of our players gets a cramp, and so I finally get in for the last 15 minutes. I'm just, dude, every time I was on his side, and so every time he got the ball, I'm just like, dude, if I could take the ball away from him, I have a story I could tell. But as I out,
Yeah, yeah. Did you end up taking the ball from him at all?
Yeah, so there's a couple times we got close, like on that picture, I'm sort of chasing him down. I poked it out of bounds, and there's another time where
Yeah.
the ball kind of broke. It was bouncing around and it's kind of bounced in front of like me and him, and I'm coming from like this angle. He's coming like straight on. And I didn't have to do this, but I decided to. I decided to slide tackle. I got the ball, it was completely clean. He like falls over me, and that was just the highlight. It's funny. A defensive play is like the highlight of my entire career.
Hmm. Yeah. So this was 2023. Is that what you were
Mhm,
saying? So that
mhm.
was we met each other right around that time too. Now that I'm thinking back to it, it's been about, I guess, almost 2 years. N- You so a lot of things are going good. You're turning the corner. Obviously, we met through real estate. When did that? I mean, that with that house hack, I'm assuming that was kind of where you got bit by the bug, is what I hear a lot of people say.
Yeah.
What did you do from there? I mean, did you sell the house in Utah, and how did you start buying real estate in Cincinnati
Yeah,
while
so
playing too?
basically yeah, so I bought that house in, April of 2021, and, it was an owner-occupant loan. You're supposed to live in it, for a year, or say you're gonna live in it for a year, and so, I wanna say within 4 months, my plan and what I decided to do was build a house because the market was still so hot at the time. You could not buy something in Utah at list price. You're always, having to bid above, and I couldn't come out of pocket enough to make up for an appraisal. Yeah. And so I decided to go through a builder and kind of take the competitive aspect out of it, I guess you could say, because I'm going directly to them and saying I'm going to wait 6 months, but we're going to pay this price. I'll put 5% down. So that was my second property that I bought. I ended up taking a HELOC out of the first one to redo the basement on that property. And then after the second one was built, I took another HELOC out just to have cash on hand. And, that was when I came out to Cincinnati. And so I did a flip around June of that year. Actually, I bought it June 1st of 2023. So that was my first off market deal I did through, sending out mailers. And so I guess between the time of me buying my first and second house and buying that one is really when I started to learn about the, off market, direct to seller, burst strategy, almost like all these other different kind of, real estate, investor sort of tips and tricks and how people actually make money. And so, started with that one house flip, which went all right. I made some money, nothing crazy, learned a lot. Shortly after that is when I met Jared, and he introduced me to the idea of buying multifamily. And I guess, it did make a lot of sense to me, having as many fourplexes as we do out here in Cincinnati. There's probably 10,000 of them. And, my affinity for the, owner occupant style, I ended up buying a fourplex in September of that year. So a few months after I bought that flip, I bought the fourplex with pretty much the proceeds I made from the flip, like went directly into the fourplex. And yeah, sort of that's kind of how I got, started initially, at least into that game. At that point, I would have had, 8 units or so, or no, 6 units.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember it was pretty early on when we
Hmm.
were all sitting together. So, for context for the listener here, I work for Jared Sturm at SNS. We buy large multifamily properties. Jared introduced Brett and I in early 2023. Brett, I remember you came into our office and we just sat down and we're talking about what you had been up to. And I remember it was probably around the time, I think you probably had like maybe 10 units. And we went driving over your 1-4 family, and we're looking at a few of your properties. And yeah, I remember you telling me about all the off market. cold calls, letters you've been sending out, and I always get a kick out of hearing your stories from those too.
Yeah, I feel like that's kinda what you have to do if you wanna get started. I mean, if you're anything like I was and like most people getting into the game, I didn't have much money at all, like disposable cash on hand to go close a deal. I certainly didn't have 25% of, 400 grand that I needed to go buy a fourplex. And so, I definitely feel that strategy. I mean, you have to find deals that have equity in them. And the vast majority of the time, I mean, unless you have a really good connection with an agent broker, I mean, you're gonna have to develop that relationship with an owner that most likely it's a tired asset, tired landlord. It's gonna need work, but these are all, things you can find if you, put that time towards whether it's cold calling or sending out those letters. I mean, that it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a lot of volume, but it's definitely, pays off.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, my role, I do a lot of it too. Just we buy bigger stuff, and it's harder in that space. We were talking about this offline. Um, so seeing some of the opportunities that you've grabbed the past couple of years just always gets me excited. Now you're in mid 2023 at this point.
Hmm.
You got 6 to 10 units, let's say. The snowball is starting to roll, as they say, and soccer's going good. When does the season wrap up that year? Is it in the fall?
Yeah, so basically, and the way the MLS does it is kind of different than most other professional soccer leagues. So we have, a league champion, which is essentially the team with the most points. We ended up winning it that year, 2023. We had the most points out of anyone in the league.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
yeah, supporters shield. It's kind of an interesting, way to put it. It's like I always thought that meant like the team with like the most sportsmanship. I don't know why. And like supporters shield, in my mind was like, but in any other league, that's the league champion. The team that has the most points is the league champion. Like that's it. But being in America, we have to have a playoffs. We have to have all this stuff. And so we won the league, and then we made it to the semifinal of the MLS Cup, is what they call it. And so our season didn't end until, and I want to say like early December maybe. And so we had like 5 weeks off, and that's kind of typical. If you you almost get punished for making it farther in MLS because the season starts mid early to mid January and ends up to mid December, depending on how far if you played in the final, you're gonna be playing in like mid December. So you're gonna have like 4 to 5 weeks off, which is not very long if you're playing 48, 46 weeks out of the year, you know what I mean? But, yeah, so it wrapped up around December that year.
Okay. And things are going good. You're still buying real estate. Keep taking me along with you up until today. What's going on now heading into your second season?
Yeah, so, yeah, that first season, I couldn't have asked for anything better. I mean, it really was like a fairy tale, story for myself at least, and the team, won the Supporters Shield, and, it was only a couple years before that, that they were really, really struggling. I wasn't here for that, but, I hear all the stories, and the fan base here is just incredible. I mean, TQL, our stadium was always just amazing to play at, but nonetheless, that was a great season. That was the best season of my, soccer career, like the one I look on most fondly of at least. And so going into the second year, here with Cincinnati, I'd signed that contract. And so, it's really just trying to build on the first. Yeah. So this is 2024. Yeah. I had 6 units at the time, still trying to figure out, real estate. How can I find off market deals? I'm experimenting with, SMS texting with, some letters here and there, some calls, some cold calling. And, I buy a second, 4 unit in March, or maybe it was May of that year. And so it took, probably 5 or 6 months until I got that 10 unit mark. And, I'm still playing soccer along this time. Not as many highlights as there was in 2023. It was a good year for me. That year think I want to say I started in like 8 or 9 games. Um, I did pretty well, building on the year prior. Um, I will say by the end of the year, my goals had kind of shifted. And to be honest, like playing against Messi and doing everything we did in 2023, that was the peak of my career. I kind of knew that. I kind of knew that, my personal potential there in soccer. it's not that it had been fully exhausted per se. It was just that, my passions were somewhat shifting in a sense towards the middle to end of 2024, just because, I had bought that fourplex. I bought two of them at that point, and then by the end of 2024, I think I bought, one more. I bought a 12 unit from auction, and I think I bought maybe 12 more units by the end of the year. I think I finished the year with like 38 doors, and I was really feeling like I was hitting some strides and getting some good momentum going. People knew that I was buying stuff; they were sending stuff to me. I felt like I had sort of a legit business. I still had a lot of stuff to figure out that I didn't realize until this year, and I still have plenty to figure out. But it was around that point that I was like, what, one more year of this, and I can do this full time. And, for me, soccer, kind of like I was saying, I felt like I just kind of hit my peak in terms of like the inputs I could put in and the outputs I could, get out. Obviously, I could always, triple down, quadruple down on it, put everything into it. But for me, I didn't know if the risk reward was there. I mean, I just knew how much it took from me those 2 years I was playing in Utah, and it took everything. And I was just like, that was like a shell of like, who I usually am, just being out there. Cause like when your identity is so tied into something you can't control, like soccer, like sports, I mean, you could get injured, coach may not like you. You could have a heart condition and not be able to play. It's hard to like logically, put yourself into that thing, especially when you feel like you already kind of accomplished what you wanted to do. And so that feeling like grew on me, for sure. And I mean, I'm very grateful that I started, having the momentum in real estate. That I did to kind of, be able to support that shift. But yeah, that was 2024. I'd say, I picked up some momentum, and then by the end of it, I was like, you know what, I think I'll probably play one more year of soccer and then, you know, go into this real estate thing full time.
Hmm. And were they, I mean, I know we've talked about this in the past, but like talk to me about the relationship and how like was FC okay with you having your business and playing for them? I mean, what was that? What were those conversations like with them? I'm sure they were aware.
Yeah, somewhat. It was definitely something that, I would people would always see me working, on my computer or whatever it is or on the phone. I was always that guy, on our trips, I always, was doing something. So I think they were aware. It's not a problem. It's just I think for me what ended up happening is kind of like I've been saying, my passion sort of shifted, and I think they could probably tell that, I wasn't as willing to do some things as I would have been before, whether that's, playing with the second team, or doing, stuff extra things to try to go the extra mile. I just didn't feel like it honestly just wasn't in me as much anymore, to kind of do all that stuff. I mean, it was at one point, because I wanted to hit a certain level in soccer, but, all this stuff was coming together and pushing me towards a real estate,
Hmm.
and it was becoming undeniable. And I was still doing fine. I was for the contract I was on, I was outperforming it in terms of how much I was playing, and the quality of player that I thought I was. But yeah, just the fact of the matter was I just couldn't, you know, it was just hard for me to justify, and like emotionally, keep putting myself, in a position in soccer when I, really felt like I was shifting towards, real estate. So it kind of became it was more and more self-evident. It wasn't like they said you can't do this. It was more like, maybe the motivation isn't fully there to like, really, really, really try to outperform, where I'm at, which is true. That I wouldn't, deny that.
Hmm. And then you ultimately decided to walk away and focus on your business. That just kind of happened recently, right? I mean, it's been how many months?
I think we're coming
Almost a
up on
year.
10 months. Yeah, almost
Yeah.
almost a year. I mean, it's crazy to say, but yeah. So I mean, going into 2025, um, I had a contract through the rest of this year, and my plan has been, since the end of 2024, my plan was to be done with soccer by the end of 2025, full time real estate. So beginning of this year, we're starting out the season. I'm playing all this stuff. We had a game in March of earlier this year, March 1st, I want to say, and I was supposed to do some stuff after the game. I didn't realize it. There's this whole snafu. long story short, I got let go from FC Cincinnati, um, com- kind of completely out of the blue. Like I said, it was after one of our games earlier in the year, and it was very odd when it happened initially because, like I said, I felt like I was outperforming my contract, and I played half the game the day before I got released, which is kind of astonishing. Being a minimum salary player and playing half the game is that's
Good
usually a
deal for
great.
them.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
So, it's kinda hard to draw a conclusion on what exactly it's from, but I think some of the factors I mentioned, just maybe being like a foot in, foot out, maybe some people could sense that, which I won't deny that was probably true. Um, but yeah, so I got let go and, I called my agent, and I called a couple people, yourself included, I mean, the initial shock was probably like 30 minutes to an hour, 2 hours, and then after that, it was like, "Wait a minute, let's make this is a life-altering decision right here, right? Because I'm on a contract for the rest of the year, and I'm getting paid regardless. I can choose to go play for another team and keep doing soccer, or I could go focus on my real estate, still have a steady paycheck for the next year, and get done 2 to 3 times more than I would if I was, playing soccer." And so honestly, after the first, like, hour or 2, I was like, "Man, I know what I have to do here." And, I told my agent that I would take a couple days to, like, see, what it felt like. I wanted to see what it was like waking up and not having practice, the next day or whatever it was. And, I really enjoyed that. There was just a thought that kept running through my mind, and it was, I'm free, I'm free now. I can finally, choose you know, live exactly how I want and like go after this, thing that I've been chasing for a while. And so, like I was saying at the time, I only had, I think I had 42 doors, maybe 46. So I bought a couple more fourplexes. I'm locked and loaded in real estate. I got my projects. I'm figuring things out, and I'm like, ready to do this. So it was an easy sort of decision. Once I had initially been like slapped in the face, it was easy to kind of be like, oh, I'm kind of ready. Like it's go time.
yeah, yeah. I remember when you called me and you were like, "Dude, I think I'm about to jump fully in." Was that before you had made up your mind, or did we talk after? I can't remember. It was right around it. I mean,
Dude, if I was calling you, that probably meant that I was decided at that point,
yeah, yeah.
you
It
know?
was God. That was a wild couple of weeks, and it's been good. I mean, you've been crushing it since then. Talk to me about the, I guess, past year now, almost since you've been full time real estate. Where are you? Where's your business at?
Yeah, so I wanna say, the first, month after that is kind of just the high of just, being on my own. It's and for me, there was no real fear involved because I knew that I was getting steady paychecks up until, like, literally a few days ago.
Yeah.
Um, and, I was kinda just doing the same thing, same old, trying to grow, but at the same time, I have responsibilities now at this point. I really honestly, it was great timing because all the deals that I bought, in 2023 and towards the end of 2023, now I had to actually operate. I had to rehab them. I had to put tenants in there. And that was, dude, if I wasn't full time, real estate, I don't know if I would have been able to do that. So the timing worked out well. So I was very busy around that time figuring out, the CapEx, crews, construction. I had never really done anything like too invasive when it comes to, renovations, but I was immediately thrown into like 20 unit turns that I had to do within like 2 or 3 months. And that's kind of just how it's been this whole year, just trying to figure out contractors and all that stuff. And so I bought those two fourplexes. Um, and then towards the middle of the year, I fixed up a couple properties. And then this was another sort of like mindset shift point. I was getting ready to refinance two fourplexes. I would have taken out like 50 grand because my strategy has been, buy with hard money, leverage up 100%, turn them around, refinance, hold them, burst strategy like a lot of people.
Hmm.
And when it came finally time to refinance these two fourplexes, I was looking at the rates and it was just, I mean, I was literally going to be, breaking even, maybe making a little bit of money, which honestly is not a bad deal. If you have, property, you're pulling out some cash, you have properties you're not really much into. But I was like, I'm leaving 250 grand in equity in these two properties to make $800 a month. What am I doing with this? And so that was sort of a mindset shift for me from the refinance out and hold and grow to the turn and burn method. And so as soon as I made that, sort of click in my mind, I went back prospecting again, cold calling, found a guy that owned a 20 unit, got it under contract for under 50 a door, sold those two fourplexes and rolled that money directly into the 20 unit. And that's kind of really changed the way that I look at, every deal that I do now.
So you're going more for scale at this point?
100%. You need it.
Yeah.
I'm at a
Mhm.
spot where I will get, 3 to 5, maintenance requests, if not daily, weekly. And if you're trying to grow, like we both know that your highest and best use of your time is finding other opportunities, connecting with people, making deals happen. If I am having to attend to these activities, which are, $10 an hour activities for a VA or, whatever for a property manager, I'm really not effectively using my time. And on the flip side of it, when does it make sense to hire someone? I mean, if you have only 10 doors, yeah, you can probably afford to just do that yourself. But if you have 65 doors, that's borderline full-time job of just handling the BS that comes with it. And it's not BS, but for our purposes, if you're trying to grow a business, the operational stuff that makes, stuff tick and actually makes these investments work. You need scale. That's another thing that I've kind of put together. It's like you need to have scale. Everyone that I've talked to, and granted, not everyone will have this advice, but the guys that I talk to that are the biggest that I respect the most, they always say go after the biggest property you can as quick as you can. And the more I look into that, the more I see that that's true. I mean, if I get to 100 doors and I can hire a full time maintenance person, and I just hired a VA like a month ago, I mean, it seriously opened up so much for me. And I'm just thinking, hey, 200 doors, what does that look like? Now I might have a full time manager. I might have two maintenance techs. I might have one VA. You can afford to have a whole team. You need a team if you want to grow.
Mhm. Yeah, you go from working in your business to working on your business is what a lot of people I've always heard say it. Yeah, when you get those economies of scale and you have those bigger properties, instead of driving around the city doing work orders, you're just at one property being able to just knock them out. That's like you said, the highest and best use of your time is probably what you're thinking about a lot, especially
Yeah, and I
owning
mean,
that much.
not everybody, is who's investing in real estate is going to go down this journey, but my goal is to get to 1,000 units in 5 years. I mean, that would be awesome. And if I'm trying to grow, that's just the fact of the matter is I have to build a team. But that's not to say that 50 doors couldn't set you free. If you have even 10 or 20 doors paid off, you're going to be making decent, monthly income once they're paid off. So I think it just depends on how you play the real estate game. But, my inclination and my desire is to keep growing. And, once I got to a certain point of like, kind of like I'm saying, like 60 plus doors, it became very evident that like I was either going to have to be involved in this business day to day a lot more than I wanted to, or I'm gonna have to keep growing to get someone to, offset it. So, I mean, it's an easy decision for me because obviously I want to keep growing, but again, not everyone is gonna have the same sort of, desires, end goal, whatever it is.
And you've done this with your own money, which is very impressive, but there's probably a higher level of risk with that, taking on, like you said, 100% leverage in some cases. How do you wrap your head around that risk? And what do you, I mean, walk me through like why you're okay with doing that. I want to understand.
Yeah, so I mean the why is, if I hadn't done this and I got let go from soccer, I would be scrambling right now because if I only own 50% or 25% or 20 or 30% of the stuff that I have, I would not feel anywhere near as, safe as I do right now owning 100% of this stuff. So that was my why, and how I feel comfortable is, I think I just transfer the onus of, finding the best deal possible. I just transfer that to myself. So instead of, saying like, this is a lot of leverage, this is a lot of risk. I look at it as saying, okay, I know I'm going to be borrowing X amount, 100% finance at a high rate, a lot of points. That just means I have to find a better deal. So I just transfer that onus to myself. I say, hey, I got to find a deal that fits this. I got to find something that is, way, undervalued or overlooked or whatever it is. And I'm fine with that. So if I'm buying something, it's got to be discounted for market value. I bought everything I buy. I try to imagine, being able to buy it for X amount and being able to sell the same day for some amount more. And I feel
Hmm.
like as long as that's the case, and obviously there are a couple components that make that possible, knowing the market really well is super important and having those direct to seller leads where you can get that discounted, value. But if you do that, I mean, why can't you have 100% finance? If I know that I could sell it right away for the next, for more, at least what I am into it for, I feel like effectively that takes, a lot of the risk off the books. I mean, you can't get into trouble if there's things you miss, whether that's, the value on the back end or the rehab, whatever it is. But it's like anything, it's measured risk and you get better over time. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem. I'll leverage. I mean, that 12 unit that I bought, I leveraged 100%. I bought it for like 44 a door. I knew it was worth 60K a door. As soon as I bought it, like no one could tell me that that's risky because I know that I could sell it the same day and make, 100 grand on it. Like that's not risky in my mind.
Hmm. So you're just finding really good deals, walking in with equity. That's giving you the confidence. Now, I want to dig in on your prospecting for those leads because that seems like it's probably your biggest competitive advantage. And I want to try to give the listeners some value here. What has been the best tool that you've found to actually accomplish that? So you talked about direct mail, you've talked about cold calls, texting. What to you is the most effective way to find these deals?
Yeah, I
Just
want to
talk to me
say
about your process. I mean, like, what are you doing day to day to actually prospect these kind of leads?
Yeah, so I've been mainly doing cold calling. That was something I picked up from a mentor of mine right towards the end of 23 after I bought my first fourplex. Was sort of that cold calling approach. I think that's extremely effective. I mean, it's what agents, brokers use, and these are the guys that are going out and finding the deals. If it works for them, it's good enough for me. And honestly, I felt like I had a very compelling story. People may not know Brett, but they know FC, and they might know me. I mean, that's happened a couple times on calls. It's not always, doesn't happen every time, but my story, I just kind of mastered, being able to pitch myself in 30 seconds. It's like, hey, my name's Brett. I play soccer for FC. I also invest in real estate. I see you on some properties, and I would tailor it if I was calling someone who, I knew only had one property, they've owned it for a while, they might just be trying to get out of the game. My, pitch is very straightforward. It's, hey, what are you looking to do with this property? Are you open to an offer on it? But if it's someone that I could see owns like 100 doors, it's completely different. My pitch is, hey, I'm Brett. I have some, properties. I see you have some as well. I would love to, get a coffee with you or lunch or kind of hear your story. But yeah, I'm a big believer in cold calling, and I think, I mean, there's just such a correlation between the amount of time I put in the prospecting and cold calling and deals that come afterwards. Obviously, we're talking like 3 to 6 months later, but I mean, it's undeniable. Over the past year and a half that I've been in 2 years, honestly, at this point that I've been doing it. Obviously, it takes a little bit to kind of build up the pipeline, but I mean, if you really want to get into some deals, man, you just, you load up that pipeline, you get out and you call people, you build relationships. And, there's been times like there's a guy that I'm going to call after New Year's that I've been talking to for 2 years. And now he finally might be ready. He's got a 30 unit building that I can get for, a lot lower than, the market would pay for something like that. It's a similar thing with another, 15 or so unit building that I'm looking at. And I spoke to both those people for like a year and a half, 2 years. So it takes time. And that's something that most people don't like want to admit. But you kind of, and I suppose if you were doing, the outbound or inbound marketing, kind of like the mailers and such, you might be able to drive some more of that quicker. If you have people that are actually interested and you get a batch of them together. But I prefer cold calling.
Hmm. And I think you were telling me offline earlier that it's interesting how your business model can evolve and change. And you like the bigger stuff, obviously, for the economies of scale. I think you said too that you've found a lot of really good deals in the 4 unit space. Are you back to buying those more, or are you still kind of focusing on the bigger stuff?
I would love to keep My plan is to sell all my 4 units and scale into more, 20 unit type deals like that 20 unit I bought. I mean, that 20 unit is gonna cash flow like 60 grand a year.
Hmm.
Um, Dude, I mean, if you have let's say I have 5 of those, right? I mean, for 1, that's great cash flow, and for 2, that's 100 units. Now I can easily be not hands off per se, but, that's the direction I'm moving to. I have changed, kinda like I was saying earlier, my mindset of, refinancing things into, like, almost exclusively flips. So, um I'm under contract on a 4 unit right now that I look at as nothing more than a flip. I mean, it's, buy for 225, put in X amount and sell it and hopefully make, 50 to 60. And my thought is, how many people are buying these kind of deals? It's not as many as someone, flipping houses. So I found my niche in, buying these 4 units. Now my exit strategy just looks a little bit different. And honestly, I'm more of an aggressive buyer because I used to look at it and say, I need to be, 75% ARV or less, all in, to buy something. Now I'm just like, okay, I can just flip these. And I mean, let's say I buy 4 next year and I just flip them and, you make a modest, but 50 on each. That's not bad. Now I have 200 grand to go put down. That's what I use for my 20 unit. So
Hmm.
I look at it as, I'll buy anything if it's a deal. I'm trying to focus on, scaling into the larger deals. However, you know, I don't have, I recently got my license, so that's a source of active income. The other one would be flipping. So I'm not opposed to buying something that I know well, that I could flip and make some money. I'm in the process. I'm under contract on selling a property, a 4 unit that I bought in October. All I did is I replaced the windows. I did 1 unit and I'll sell it and make about 45 on it. And so, I mean, I see no reason why I couldn't, buy 5 of those next year and just, use those proceeds to go buy, $1 million property.
Hmm. So focusing on long term holds with the bigger stuff, and then the
Yeah.
smaller stuff you use as a tool to get into that larger stuff. That makes sense.
I
Um,
feel like, I think, like someone like me, if you're very aggressive about going out and finding deals, you should always be turning and burning. I mean, real estate is a very capital intensive game. And, if you don't have money, like at least, when I was getting started, I didn't have any money. And if I would have held all this stuff, yeah, I would have, held deals with little money into them, but I'm also leaving a lot of equity on the table. And if I'm as good as I like to think as I am at finding deals, I could turn that, I should be doubling that, my equity every year, every whatever, however many months. So I feel like if you have a constant pipeline of deals, turn and burn is the way to go. But not everyone can be doing that. I mean, it is a full time job sourcing these leads, keeping these relationships warm and closing the deals. That's a full time sort of job if you want to do it at scale. But I see no reason why, if someone is really, dedicated to that, they should be, holding even some of the larger stuff. I mean, that 20 unit, if I found the property that needed, 600 grand of equity, but it offered as much upside to double that in 12 months or 16 or 18 months, I would be stupid not to do that.
yeah, yeah. Well, you've probably had some pretty um, interesting learning experiences with contractors and working those turns early on. Um,
Mhm.
do you have any stories that come to mind that will be worth sharing that are kind of like it's not all sunshines and rainbows all the time, like that just keeps people level?
Yeah. Well, I think that, something I always heard when I was sort of getting started was, people complaining about contractors. And I always thought it was funny because, when I was getting started, I didn't have any deals. I was like, man, how can that be that big of a problem? Like, I'm just over here trying to find my first deal. This Contractors, what are you talking about? Like, why is that? I never imagined, there'd be that much of an issue, but 100%. I mean, I've gone through, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 this year that, kind of blew up, thankfully, if you do any sort of due diligence up front, you should have some sort of finished product at the end. It may not be the best, and you may not be happy with the timeline, but I've been able to scrape by, and thankfully I have found, I got one guy that I really like and he does things a very specific way. And, if I was to tell myself something earlier in the year, and I know everyone always says this, but it's true, you get what you pay for. I was very stingy when it came to, in my mind, I'm like, okay, this deal works if I put in 5 grand a unit, but if it goes up to 10, it doesn't work as well. And so in my mind, I'm like, keep this down as much as possible. Let's go with the cheapest option. But, there's 100% of value to getting things done right, done quickly, and done so where you don't have to worry about them anymore. I mean, there's a monetary component to that and also a peace of mind component. Because when you are moving people into these units, if you got to go back through and do all the electric all over because it was messed up or something, I literally just had that at a 4 unit building where it was completely vacant, redid the units and started to put people in. And the first day, nothing works, no heat, no hot water, no nothing. That was a $7,000 bill that I had to foot at the end. So it's not just like, people saying that you get what you pay for. Like you will run into these issues and actually have to fork over. That's an extra, $2,500 or $2,000 a unit, that I may have saved with the first guy, but
Yeah.
paid for on the back end nonetheless.
What about the house that blew up?
Yeah, I was yeah, that was the time. I mean, that was one of the tenants in the 12 unit that I bought from auction. And I mean, where this is in Price Hill. It's got its own, sort of charm over there, I'd say, right?
Mm, yeah.
Definitely an interesting area.
Yeah, it's kinda dangerous over there for the listener. It's just yeah.
Yeah. So someone got, yeah. So these properties that I bought, when I bought them from auction, pretty much sight unseen, 100% financed, 5 points, 3 points up front, 2 on the back end, 13% interest. So and 6-month balloons. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but like that's a quick turnaround. I mean, if you think about it, how long does an eviction take, right? If I were to start today, I'll get a court date in a few weeks, and then, if even if you win, it might it's a, almost 2-month long process, right? And then it comes to, actually turning the unit and then getting a tenant. I mean, if I did all those units day one, like trying to get everyone out and just redoing it, I might have been able to do it on time. But I took
Mhm.
my time with them. I ended up doing okay, but I had this tenant that wasn't paying rent and he didn't pay rent for pretty much the entire time I owned it. So I finally filed eviction. And on, 2 days before you're supposed to leave, he decided to leave us a present, which was, lighting the leaving the gas on in his apartment and lighting it. And so the entire building ended up having an explosion, which was yeah, obviously a terrible, terrible thing to happen. No one
Yeah.
was
No one
seriously
got
injured
hurt.
except for
Yeah.
him. I mean,
Okay.
I do not know how he even survived, but he admitted to it and was charged with arson, like 7 counts of arson, and so he's in jail. But that was definitely, it was funny because that was a Sunday night, right? 8 p.m. I get this call. I'm just getting out of the shower, and I get a voicemail actually, and I'm like trying to listen to it, just screaming. So I call her back, and she's just telling me the entire building's on fire. So I'm going out over there, and there's fire trucks, and I'm like, immediately, I'm like, I know where they're going. I'm just gonna follow them, and of course, the entire street, like we go, the entire street's shut down. And I'm trying to get a hold of my insurance guy. It's like 10 p.m. at night. He's not picking up. And I finally get a hold of him and I tell him what happened. He can't believe it. Nobody knows what to do. No one's dealt with something like this. It was just absolutely insane. I mean, I didn't sleep at all that night. It was crazy.
But they covered it, right? Insurance covered.
Yeah, it ended up
Yeah.
working out well. I mean, I would definitely say this is important. I've actually had a buddy who recently said something to me along these lines, but the difference between actual cash value and replacement cost value, God forbid, but I do think it is important to insure things for, like replacement cost value because, my particular instance, that allowed me to get, a lot more than, what I actually pay for this property via its replacement cost value is obviously a lot higher than,
Yeah.
cash value you're paying for it. That's not always the case, but, for something in Price Hill being that old, it's not new construction by any means. Obviously, the replacement cost value is, a lot more, but it's more expensive to insure that because it's a lot higher price. But obviously, in this event, it worked out a lot in my favor. But I had no idea any of this stuff, going into, I was an investor, but that didn't mean that I knew the ins and outs of every single, yeah, you know,
Yeah, you wouldn't be
insurance
able to
policy.
start ever. Yeah, I mean, no one knows everything going in, and you
Yeah.
just have the guts to jump in and figure it out.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it's all comes back to, having a great deal. I knew that was a great deal. I knew I'd figured it out, and, it ended up, still working out, even having that, explosion, but, I mean, it's crazy to just say out loud, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we get coffee up the road. Just for the listener, we get coffee right up the road from there, and he's like, "Hey, my house that blew up's right down the street. Make sure you drive by it on the way out of here." That's funny. Um, I think this is a fun question. There's probably a lot of people who are listening, and maybe some of this stuff's going over their head, like the term HELOC or like a house hack. So I think there's an opportunity just to ask you if you were completely starting over right now and wanted to begin to build your real estate business, how would you do it from scratch? Would you still do that house hack strategy, or is there something different you would do at this point? What would it look like?
I think my house hacks worked alright. I mean, the first 2 that I bought in Utah, I sold one recently for no profit. The market out there is just, I kinda got in at a great time and then, wanted to sell to get my cash out, the equity that I had in it, which was just like my pure cash, not appreciation. Um, so that one, I mean, it was my it's a good entry into the game is what I'll say, and I
Hmm.
feel like it really just depends on, what you wanna do with this, I mean, if you plan on being in this game and, maybe you're buying 1 house hack a year for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I don't think that's a bad strategy. If I was looking back on it now and, I had my plan fleshed out, which I still don't, and I definitely didn't back then, I might look at things a little differently. I think that the biggest value in real estate is, finding great deals. And so I would, that's what I've changed my focus to being 100% that, like I said, I hired the VA to kind of take care of the day to day. And my sole focus is just putting together deals because I found, that's really what moves the needle. That 12 unit, this 20 unit, those move the needle for me. A 50 unit is going to move the needle. If I put in the time to go out and find a deal, I mean, there's really no limit, right? I mean, you find an owner that's owned a property for 50 years and, they want to sell or finance it to you with 10% down or 0% down. I mean, who's to say that, you couldn't go out and find something like that? I mean, I think really it's just real estate is all about the opportunity you can sort of drum up. So, I mean, if I was getting started again, I would try to look more towards what my end goal is and, work every day towards, trying to bring about opportunity that could lead in that direction more and more.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like there's so many different ways to be successful in real estate, and I think a lot of people find a strength or a competitive advantage and they lean into it and they focus on it for a long period of time. So for you, that's prospecting new deals and walking in with equity. Maybe
Yeah.
for someone else, that's being very good at renovations and construction. Um, so I think, to your point, it is probably just, it comes down to that. Can you find the right deals and can you actually operate them? That's helpful. This is something that I wanted to ask. Like, can you define exactly what a house hack is and what a HELOC is? There were a couple of terms earlier that I wanted to have you define for the listener, just so they were aware.
Yeah. So a house hack for me is a piece of property you can buy with an owner occupant loan and offset the costs of that property. So the mortgage, the insurance, utilities, whatever it is, via, renting out, whether it's other units or other rooms. I had to be creative on my first one. It was a townhome type build. And so I was just doing the rooms, but, it looked like a $1,600 a month mortgage, negated by a $600 a month upstairs bedroom rent and $1,000 a month, basement rent. So that was my first house hack.
Hmm.
And then so I bought that for 330 grand. A year later, it appraised for 410, and I took out the HELOC on it, which is just essentially a way to tap into the equity that you've built in a property. And I like it on a personal residence just because you can usually get a little bit more aggressive with how much they'll lend you. I've never done it on an investment property. I don't know if you can get a HELOC on an investment property or what. I'm sure you can. I don't know what loan to value it'll go up to, but when I finance my that first property, I bought it for 330. I put down 5%, so I owed 316,000 on it, approximately 315,000. And year later, it appraised for 410, and I went and got a 90% loan to value HELOC from a credit union. So that from 315 to 410, that 95,000 in equity, I tapped into about half of that. I pulled out, got access to a line of credit of about 40,000 that I could just pull at any time. And at the time, the rate I want to say was like, I don't know, it was so cheap. It was probably like 5%, maybe a little bit less. Now it's, probably 7.5%. I've paid it off since I, sold the house, but um, I do like that strategy. I think I got very lucky, buying there. Like, it's not often that you see a house appreciate, 30% in value in 1 year, nor is it sustainable. And actually, I sold the house for less than that 3 years later. So it's kind of funny how it all works out. But
Hmm.
uh, yeah, I mean, that was my introduction at least. And I thought I was just a genius. I mean, you can imagine, right? You buy a house for 300 grand, you put down 15,000, right? And a year later, I'm pulling out 40,000 to go renovate another property. I mean, that was pretty cool, but it
Yeah.
doesn't happen in every case. Honestly, you would if someone had the capacity to go out and renovate something. I've never done this, but one of my buddies did a FHA, the 203K loan, like the renovation loan, uh, where you can, put 3.5% down, buy a property, and get access to renovation funds. I mean, that would be a great idea because at the end of that, if you do it right, you got some equity, you can refinance, do that again. Like, you force appreciation on. I mean, that's really the only measurable and repeatable way to do this. You
Hmm.
can't always bank on the market going up 30% in 1 year, obviously.
Does your buddy have any like construction experience or anything, or is it pretty much already renovated?
Yeah, no, he definitely does. So that probably isn't for the complete beginner. That's more for maybe a contractor that, already has crews or understands it in depth and understands the numbers. That's definitely a more advanced sort of strategy.
Hmm. I gotcha. Now, you talk about off market lead prospecting, cold calling. Where are you getting these leads? Where do you find the owner's information? What are you doing to actually find a phone number that's working?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be creative. I do have CoStar now, so um, that's a way to kind of get top level sort of ideas of who might own things. But yeah, I mean, you have to be creative. I think I had a lot of success using county records. Our
Hmm.
auditor site is pretty good in Hamilton County. You can get access to a lot on there, whether it's owner's information or other documents. Sheriff or like recorders websites. Where you can see mortgages. You honestly, you just have to be creative. It's not easy, but the way I think about it is, let's say you have someone that's got a property you want, the more difficult it is to find that person, more likely that it is, that they're less touched per se and less people have actually gotten in contact with them. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, that's a really good point where it gets difficult. A lot of people would quit, and that's where you need to keep pushing. There's a lot of owners that just don't want to be known at all. Like it always has blown my mind how you come across someone and this. I mean, I do a lot of the same stuff, the auditor, and maybe there's someone out there that no one knows who they are. They're completely not known by the public, but then they got a I don't know, like $50 million portfolio of real estate that no one knows about, and it's all right there on the county records. And it's a pretty neat thing to see for some people that have really built a amazing foundation financially, and they probably live pretty neat lives too. Because real estate, I mean, once you kind of get it to that point, it kind of will. I mean, if you're operating at a high level, sure you have to be on site, but if you have the right people running it, you can unplug as much as you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and if
That's
you're
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're trying to get to 1,000 units. Um, so you said 5 years. What is the next? I mean, what's your long term vision? I mean, like, how are you going to actually accomplish that? Is it like a lot of leverage? You're doing it with your own capital. Just walk me through your goals the next maybe 5 to 10 years too.
Yeah, I feel like I think the pathway is there. I'll run through the numbers in my head all the time. Like I said, I'm a stats guy, numbers guy. So in my mind, I'm always running through, you know, what do I have cash on hand, equity, what do I need to sell to get X amount of dollars? How many units could that buy me? So it's really translating that idea of selling and scaling and being aggressive. I think I have to be if I want to get to 1,000 units, and I don't want to have to use any outside capital. I have to absolutely just be extremely aggressive about and disciplined in terms of finding great deals, adding value quickly and aggressively, and then capturing that quickly. Whether that's refinancing if it's something I do want to hold, or selling and scaling up. So there's that piece, and then it's also just finding the actual deals. I mean, that's I know that I'm gonna have to spend a lot of time on, finding these deals, but they're out there. I think, it's really no different finding a single family house that you can buy, fix up, and take your cash out of than it is, a 30 unit or 50 unit. Obviously, it might be more difficult. There's less of them, but it's the same sort of process. You don't have to do that too many times before you have a great base. I do think it's going to get increasingly more difficult, but I think it also will get increasingly easier potentially too. Once you start looking at some bigger deals, because like for example, I sold those two fourplexes into a 20 unit. I mean, who's to say what it's worth? But I bought it for 1 million. Even if I sold it for 1.2, I have 400,000 equity right there. Let's say I could roll that into $2 million worth of property now. I feel like it really just comes down to the deal, and I'm not going to sit around waiting for a broker to bring me a deal that might work. You got to go out and absolutely grind to find these opportunities, but they are out there. If you build those relationships, they're absolutely out there.
Hmm. And I mean, is there a number like when you hit 1,000 units? Do you think that's going to be like, okay, I'm good now. I'm going to unplug, move to Sarasota or something? I mean, is that the end goal, or do you think you'll keep going from there, or what does that look like? And it could change, like you said. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I met someone recently that who has kind of really inspired me to, change a little bit how I was thinking, because I know we've been talking quite a bit, and my plan was to start raising money at some point. But this is a guy that I know that owns 2,000 or so units and has no partners in it, and he's 6 or so years older than me. And when the first time I spoke to him on the phone, he told me his goal is to get to 100,000 units. I haven't heard anyone say that, and I don't even know if I would give him, like, I like to have audacious goals. I don't even know if I would put that as a goal for myself, just because it's just such a crazy number. I do think that something I have realized since I stopped playing soccer though is that, like, I need goals, I need aggressive, and those audacious goals to kind of keep me going like every day, whether that's eating a certain way or like keeping in shape or whatever it is. Like, I just need to do hard things to feel like I'm you know being productive or feel like good, you know what I'm saying? So, I it 100% like how much I like real estate. I know that once I hit 1,000, I mean, that's just gonna be another baseline. And realistically, it's not really a financial thing at that point. It's a game, that I love, and a lot of us, love this game of trying to build a business and a real estate business at that. So no, I don't think that I'll ever, be just fully clocked out and like I'm done. Like finally, like I can stop doing this thing now. I don't think it'll ever feel like that.
hmm well, that means you love it. That's good. I want
100%.
to start the transition to wrap us up here. I know we're getting close to time, but I've got a couple of rapid fire questions that I like to ask to kind of tie a bow on this. I won't really follow up much on these just to kind of move through them. But are you ready to jump in on there?
Yeah, let's go.
Cool. If you had an entire day to yourself with no obligations, how would you spend it?
Oh, that's gonna be today actually. Outside of this, going to the beach with a cigar and some food, maybe a sandwich, and just relaxing, chilling. Gym earlier, little bit of work, a little bit of play.
Hmm. What kind of sandwich?
I don't even know, dude. I gotta make one.
There's a place in Sarasota that like is famous for
Hannah's
um
Deli.
yes, yeah, okay, yeah, I've
Yep,
had that. Yeah,
probably there. Yep.
okay, there you go. What's something that you changed your mind about recently that was something that you held firmly for a long time?
Does it have to be business or
Anything. It could be something
anything?
small.
Let me change my mind about that. I mean, I guess it's kind of like the same thing we've been talking about for a while, but just turn and burn. I know that is business as a real estate thing.
Mhm,
If there's anything else outside of just life in general. I mean, it's been a journey for me the past like 10 months, honestly. Just learning a lot about myself. But um, I thought that I would be maybe more relaxed, having done soccer, but I think I really overlooked that competitive component. So I
mhm,
need that in life. Like I was just saying, whether it's you know trying to be X amount in real estate or you know lifting or whatever it is. I'm not a huge lifter, but you need
mhm,
that advantage or competitive sort of aspect.
yeah. What's a purchase or investment that you've made, big or small, that's had an outsized impact on your life that's not real estate?
Oh, I did for my dad's birthday this year. We went fishing. We went like deep sea fishing, and I paid for it. And honestly, just like, we've always been okay, but, I think just the way that they look at money is so different, than we might, they're not real estate investors. They're just, employees that have done well, but, they for them, cash is like a pile of money. It's not like a river of money like it is for us, cash flow wise.
Mhm,
So just treating them to that, and just that's a huge motivation to keep trying to do what we do.
mhm. If you could follow, uh, let's say 2 to 3 people to shape your worldview on social media, it's kinda like your personal Mount Rushmore of thinkers. I guess actually 4. Who would make that cut for you?
So there's a couple guys that like I was saying, the guy that I met not too long ago. His name is Ferris Garcia. Um,
Mhm.
and so him, and then he's also got a guy. There's a guy that's kind of like him, but even farther along, named Logan Rankin. I think we've probably spoken about him before, right?
Yeah, Logan's page is great. I follow a bunch of his stuff.
Yeah,
He's completely no outside capital, same thing.
him
Yeah.
and Ferris, like, I mean, dude, it's like I was saying, Ferris is like 2,000 doors, and like they're like chasing each other. So those guys are up there for sure for me to kind of hopefully I can do similar. Let's see, someone else. I like Jesse Itzler. Do you know that guy? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I love Jesse. I think his stuff's great, and
yeah,
I like his partner, Devin Levesque. I
yeah.
like some of their stuffs. He does the all-day running company and the Running Man event.
Yes, he does. And he's got the calendar or whatever. I just like his outlook on like being intentional. I'm a huge believer in like nothing happens for a coincidence, whether it's, you want to result in real estate and business or socially or, just life or like accomplishing something. Like the first 2 years that I was playing soccer, that time went by so fast. And when I was out there in Utah, I just feel like I left a lot on the table. And I was like, you know what? I'm never gonna let that happen again. I know how fast a year, 2 years goes. It's crazy, dude. So I'm a big believer in like intentionally, trying to accomplish things that you want to do.
Yeah. God, he would be a really fun one to talk to, just to
It'd be
get to
great.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so that's that 3. You got one more for me?
Let's see. Joe Rogan is funny for sure. He's funny
Yeah.
as hell. Um, uh, so yeah, but mainly those guys. I mean, a lot of my Instagram is just, I mean, it's kind of like friends, but I pick up some stuff from those guys, and definitely Jesse for sure. I mean, he's got a great outlook on, like you said, being intentional.
Mhm. going to move to the next one. Have you ever hit a big milestone that you've been chasing for a while and you still felt like something was missing when you got there? And how did you deal with that gap, maybe if it did happen between achievement and fulfillment?
Yeah, I'd say earlier this year, when I stopped playing soccer, I mean, I've felt comfortable in the sense of like not having to go get another job. That was my goal, but still felt severely lacking on a day to day basis without having some kind of like direction and conviction towards, I feel like us is like, if you're a high achiever, you need to be kind of looking and always, going for, I don't know, the next level. So I kind of missed that a little bit after I got done playing soccer. I got a little comfortable, but yeah, it was just kind of finding and defining what does that look like, and taking those steps every day.
Yeah. I want to wrap up um, with one more question that I like to ask at the end of every single episode with every guest I have on. And I'll give you a minute to think on it. But what is the biggest piece of wisdom that in your life that's had the biggest impact on you that you hope a listener of this episode will carry forward? If it's the one thing that they take away.
But yeah, I mean, I'm big on being intentional with things because obviously we talk a lot of business stuff. We talk a lot of goals, and obviously not everyone has the same sort of goal. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are just comfortable, working, job and just doing that is totally fine. But I think just being intentional with whatever it is you want, identifying it, and you know, knowing that each day you have to get up and do something that's going to move you closer to that. Otherwise, you're naturally just going to kind of fall away from it. That's something I feel like I heard someone. I mean, I know Jesse is big on that, or that's like a big theme of his. But yeah, I think that's the biggest sort of piece of wisdom I picked up.
So being intentional with your
Yeah,
goals and what you're pursuing.
yeah. I mean, that's every day. I'm trying to move the needle, whatever it is. And if you're not trying to move the needle, I mean, 6 months, a year will fly by, and you won't have made any progress, and people are surprised. But and I was at first, but now it doesn't surprise me. I'm like, well, I didn't wake up every day, wanting to and having a plan to improve this metric of life. So it's kind of a weird way to think about things, especially if you're talking about like your social group or your friends or like trying to, elevate or whatever it is, But I don't know. That's the way that I think personally. So it works well for me to be like, hey, what are the areas I want to improve in? How can I do that, systematically? What does that look
hmm
like piece by piece, day by day, month by month, whatever?
Yeah, and that can translate to a lot of good, not just in real estate, but being a better family member and all things. So that's great, Brett. I really do appreciate your time here. Is there anywhere that I can direct my listeners to follow you or anywhere online that they can check out?
Yeah, I got a Instagram, Brett underscore Halsey 17. I just made a Twitter. I think it's just Brett Halsey. I haven't posted too much on it, but that's definitely a plan going into the new year and beyond is just try to get really active on there and just, throw out some random nonsense, I'm sure, but hopefully there's some value in it every once in a while.
I didn't know you were on Twitter. I'll give you a
I know
follow.
I just added it. I just
Yeah,
created. Yeah.
I just have a burner account at this point. I haven't actually made like a official one. It's my
Yeah.
dog's names is the
Yeah.
username. So you'll see Stan Stew 22 will follow you later today.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, I appreciate your time today. It means a lot, and I hope you have a good new year too. Okay.
Yes, sir, Steve. I appreciate it.
All right. See
Good
you.
talking with you.